She was invisible, a cleaning lady with calloused hands and dreams too big for her uniform. No one saw her, until the day she spoke up in a language no one expected, and silenced a billionaire. In a luxury hotel buzzing with international investors, chaos erupted. A German billionaire refused to speak any language but his own. No translator could understand him. Tensions rose. Staff panicked. Deals hung by a thread. Then a voice rang out. Not from a manager, not from a professional, from a woman scrubbing the marble floor. What happened next changed her life, and his, forever. Stay with us until the end to see how one act of courage shattered class barriers, ignited jealousy, and turned a hotel maid into something no one saw coming. And before we begin, Sparkles, what's the bravest thing you've ever done when no one believed in you? Tell us in the comments. Someone out there might need your story today. The Grand Imperial Hotel in Mexico City stood like a palace under the golden sunset. Flags fluttered in the breeze. The scent of fresh orchids mingled with roasted espresso in the air. Bellboys rushed. Guests shimmered in suits and silks. It was the first day of the International Investment Summit. And beneath all the grandeur, Lupita Hernandez scrubbed the lobby floor. Every morning, she arrived before sunrise. Same gray uniform, same mop, same quiet smile. She knew every stain on the marble, every crack, every whisper behind her back. To most, she was just the help. But behind her tired eyes lived a mind sharp as glass, and a secret that had been buried for years. No one knew Lupita spoke fluent German. No one asked. Until he arrived. Before dawn broke over Mexico City, Lupita Hernandez was already awake, her alarm a soft chime at 4:30 a.m. The same time she'd set every morning for the past 5 years. In the dim light of her tiny apartment, she pressed her calloused palms together, whispering a prayer for strength. Her uniform hung neatly on a chair, a modest grey tunic and black slacks. The unremarkable armor she wore each day to the Grand Imperial Hotel. She navigated the empty streets with a steady rhythm, her footsteps echoing against shuttered storefronts. The cool air reminded her of her childhood in Veracruz, where she learned German from tattered cassettes her father brought home after a brief stint working in Berlin. Back then, language was freedom, each unfamiliar word a promise of a world beyond her family's narrow windows. But life had other plans, her father's illness, mounting bills, the need to earn every peso. She shelved her diploma, traded lectures for mops, and left her dreams behind at the foot of the dormer bed. At the hotel, Lupita moved through the grand lobby with practiced grace. She polished the marble until it gleamed under the chandelier's glow, all the while listening to the soft murmur of staff gossip and the clink of fine china. Guests passed her without a glance, executives in tailored suits, tourists clutching guidebooks, and bellboys racing to deliver champagne on silver trays. To them, she was simply part of the scenery, a shadow at the edge of their opulence. Yet beneath her calm exterior churned a storm of emotions. She bore the sting of daily invisibility, the sting when a manager dismissed her questions, the ache when her fluent German went unnoticed even as she overheard foreign dignitaries struggling to communicate. Each slight etched deeper into her heart. And as she crouched to buff a scuff mark, she felt a familiar tightening in her chest, a mixture of anger, longing, and grief for the girl who once believed her voice mattered. Tonight, she would return to a cramped room where her mother lay feverish. Money was tight. Every cent she earned paid for medicine and rent. Still, Lupita found solace in her secret ritual. Before sleep, she practiced German phrases aloud, carefully, softly, imagining them soaring across continents. The words tasted of possibility, of a self she had almost forgotten. Then came the knock on the back office door, an urgent summons from the front desk. A high-profile guest, an inscrutable German billionaire, was in a rage. No translator could calm him. The hotel's polished machinery was grinding to a halt. And in that moment, as the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, Lupita felt her pulse quicken. Her heart hammered with conflicting emotions, fear of stepping beyond her station, shame at the thought of exposing her hidden talent, and an undeniable spark of hope. If she spoke up, if she broke the barrier between title and servant, could she finally reclaim the girl who once dared to dream? With trembling hands, she rose and straightened her uniform. Each step toward the lobby felt weighted by years of silence, but also buoyed by a newfound resolve. As she emerged into the grand hall, the chandelier's crystal prisms caught in her eyes like distant stars. She took a breath and prepared to speak the words that would shatter the walls between invisible worker and celebrated hero. In the hush that followed, all eyes would turn to her, and nothing would ever be the same. By mid-morning, the Grand Imperial's lobby pulsed with urgency. Cream-colored walls echoed hurried footsteps. Gold-trimmed drapes framed floor-to-ceiling windows. But the sunlight felt cold, harsh, as if the hotel itself sensed the gathering storm. In the center of it all stood Herr Klaus Keller, tall, implacable, arms crossed, eyes like chipped ice. No one understood a single word he barked in German. The official interpreter, a polished professional in a navy suit, fumbled over vocabulary. His voice quavered, his confidence cracked. Each mispronounced syllable seemed to fuel Klaus's fury. He slammed his palm against the polished marble desk, sending rings of condensation from his ice-cold water glass rippling across the surface. A sudden hush fell over the crowd. Lupita watched from behind a row of velvet ropes. Mop in hand, heart thundering in her chest. She saw the fear in the concierge's eyes, the desperation in the banquet manager's stance as he wrung his hands. She felt it in her bones, every dream she dared to cradle. Every lesson in German she'd struggled to master, all teetered on the brink of oblivion. Around her, whispers bloomed into frantic chatter. What if he cancels the summit? Our reputation, the investors. Staff scattered, flitting like startled birds. The lobby's grandeur shrank to a stage for collective panic. Lupita's throat tightened. She remembered her father's voice, patient and encouraging, when she first stumbled through Goethe's verses. Sprich laut, mein Kind, deine Stimme ist stark. But now, speaking meant risking everything. She felt the weight of her uniform, the invisible barrier between her and these powerful strangers. Shame whispered, "You are nothing but a cleaner." Pride, however, pulsed stronger, "You are the only one who can help them." As her conscience battled her fear, Klaus unleashed a final, guttural roar. The interpreter froze. Guests shifted uncomfortably. In that breathless moment, Lupita realized silence itself had become the crisis. Without voices to bridge their worlds, fortunes would topple, and lives hang in the balance. She clenched the mop handle, knuckles whitening, every fiber of her being surged with two irreconcilable truths, the crushing weight of invisibility and the fierce fire of purpose. Stepping forward would be a betrayal of every rule, but remaining hidden would betray her own potential. In a heartbeat, she made her choice. Lupita's heart thundered as she crossed the lobby floor, each step a battle between the instinct to hide and the desperate need to act. The interpreter stood frozen behind the front desk, sweat beading at his temples. Klaus's icy glare burned holes into the polished marble. Around her, staff shrank back, none dared fill the void of silence that pulsed like a living thing. Yet in that pregnant pause, Lupita heard something more profound, the echo of her own worth. Memories surged, late-night study sessions with her father's battered cassette player. The elation of nailing perfect pronunciation. The shame she'd felt when those skills seemed worthless in her uniform. Shame had whispered she was invisible. Pride now roared that she belonged in this moment. With her breath caught in her throat, she cleared her voice, soft at first, then firm. "Herr Keller," she said in flawless German. Heads snapped toward her. Even the chandelier's crystals seemed to shimmer in surprise. Her words carried across the hushed lobby. "Sir, I can translate for you." Time twisted. The metallic tang of fear snapped into clarity. Klaus's eyes widened, then narrowed as he studied her, this unassuming woman in a grey tunic. His arms unfolded. Staff felt the tension peel away like layers of paint. She stepped beside the interpreter and, with measured calm, rendered Klaus's demands into Spanish, then back into German, bridging two worlds with nothing but her voice. She caught every nuance, his impatience, his wounded pride, the flicker of desperation beneath his arrogance. And she answered with empathy, soothing his anger with gentle precision. Internally, Lupita trembled. She recalled every sting of disrespect she'd endured, managers who ignored her suggestions, colleagues who scoffed at her intelligence. Now, each brush of her voice against foreign ears was a vindication. Yet even as adrenaline surged, a pang of fear pulsed. What if they reject me afterward? What if this courage costs me my job? But when Klaus's scowl softened into a grudging nod, relief and triumph washed through her. The billionaire, once a towering monolith of indifference, leaned forward, extending a gloved hand. "Danke," he said, the single word weighted with unlikely deference. In that instant, Lupita's world shifted. The line between servant and steward blurred. The uniform that once confined her now bore witness to her hidden strengths. She had risked everything, and the payoff was more than gratitude. It was recognition of her humanity. As onlookers exhaled, whispers turned to awed admiration. Lupita straightened her spine, mop forgotten at her side, and allowed herself a fleeting smile, one that spoke of hard-earned pride and the promise of what was to come. For 5 days straight, Lupita Hernande vanished from the margins of the Grand Imperial and re-emerged at its very center. Each morning, she donned her grey tunic not as a cleaner, but as Klaus Keller's personal interpreter, though in her heart, she still felt the old pangs of imposter syndrome. Day 1 began with a private breakfast meeting in the hotel's executive suite. Klaus, still tense from the previous day's debacle, spoke rapidly in German about a multi-million-dollar deal with Latin American investors. Lupita listened, heart racing, as she translated every clause, every hesitation, her voice steady despite the weight of stakes, a contract that could reshape entire communities. Behind her calm exterior, her mind soared with conflicting emotions. Pride ignited, proof that her hidden talent mattered. Yet a darker voice whispered betrayal, they've conscripted you into their world, only to discard you when the summit ends. She pushed the doubt aside, focusing on her father's words, your voice is your bridge. Midweek, Klaus invited her to accompany him on a tour of the hotel's penthouse wing. There, he confided in her, as a young immigrant in Hamburg, he'd been shunted into menial work, ridiculed for his accent, just as Lupita had once been dismissed in Veracruz. His revelation struck her like lightning. They were mirror images separated by wealth and status. In that moment of vulnerability, Lupita's resolve hardened. She shared a fragment of her own story, how she'd abandoned her university dreams to care for her ailing mother. How each shift behind the mop reinforced her invisibility. Klaus listened, eyes softening. They formed an unspoken bond, two outsiders bound by language and loss. By the summit's final day, press photographers lurked in the lobby. Whispers circulated, who is this cleaning lady turned confidant? Journalists snapped candid shots of Lupita translating with confidence, her uniform stark against Klaus's tailored suit. In those frames, she saw herself, not as a faceless worker, but as a living testament to resilience. Yet the glare of the spotlight brought its own shadows. A trusted colleague had begun spreading rumors that Lupita was an opportunist. A publicity stunt. Lupita felt the sting of betrayal anew. Pain coiled in her chest. Had she traded one form of invisibility for another, more vicious one? As the summit closed with applause and champagne, Klaus caught Lupita's eye and raised his glass. In that silent toast lay gratitude, and the promise that this was only the beginning. As the summit's final applause faded, the Grand Imperial's corridors hummed with after-party chatter. For Lupita Hernande, it should have been a moment of triumph, yet beneath the surface gleamed a different current. Whispers trailed her every step. Who does she think she is? The cleaning lady playing executive. Even some of the staff she'd once called friends now offered polite nods laced with frost. That afternoon, she was called into human resources. The cold sterility of the office, glass walls, chrome accents, felt like a trap. Across the desk sat a manager she trusted, his smile thin and rehearsed. He slid a tablet across the table, security footage showing Lupita entering the executive files room. Care to explain? He asked, voice devoid of the warmth she'd known. Shock slammed into her chest. She'd never so much as touched those folders. Yet in that instant, every unresolved slight flashed before her, years of being unseen, unheard, dismissed. Anger flared alongside terror. They're erasing my truth. She opened her mouth to protest, but her voice quivered. Outside the office, the lobby's glittering chandeliers seemed to mock her. The same space that had witnessed her greatest courage now became a stage for her deepest humiliation. Tears threatened to spill, but she fought them back, her father's steady counsel echoing, stand tall. Even when they try to pull you down. Back in the HR office, the manager's tone sharpened. We have to suspend you pending investigation. The word suspend landed like a guillotine. Lupita caught her reflection in the glass partition. Uniform askew. Mop abandoned. Hope flickering in her eyes. Word spread that Klaus Keller was livid. The next morning, she received an urgent summons to the lobby. Her heart pounded. This was the reckoning. She stepped into the vast hall. Walls lined with curious onlookers. Klaus stood beneath the central chandelier. Arms folded, silence thick, her stomach clenched. Then he spoke, voice low but unwavering. You have been treated unfairly. He signed a directive on his tablet. Reinstate her immediately, or I will hold this hotel accountable. Staff gasped. The manager who'd accused her paled. Camera footage was reviewed in full. The screens showed Lupita simply crossing the corridor. Her past scanned at every turn. The false accusation shattered. The HR manager, flushed with shame, was escorted away. In the hush that followed, Klaus raised a single glass of champagne. His gaze found Lupita's across the lobby. To those who dare to rise, he declared. His words rolled through the room like thunder, silencing doubt and igniting admiration. Lupita felt tears, this time. Tears of vindication, slip-free. The betrayal she endured had transformed into a testament of her strength. As guests turned applause into a crescendo, she realized that true validation often comes wrapped in struggle. When the last echo of applause faded, Lupita Hernande found herself standing alone in the lobby she once scrubbed spotless. Now awash in warm evening light. Every polished surface, the grand staircase, the gilded pillars, seemed to glow with possibility. But inside her chest, she still felt the tremor of what had happened, the sting of betrayal, the fire of vindication, and now the gentle ache of hope. That night, Klaus Keller summoned her to a quiet corner of the ballroom, where crystal chandeliers spilled light onto hushed guests. He slipped an envelope into her hand, an offer she had never dared to imagine. He would fund her dream, a community center where immigrant workers could learn languages, gain skills, and discover their own voices. Not as charity, but as partnership. Lupita's eyes brimmed. She remembered her mother's trembling hands, fumbling for medicine money. She thought of classmates abandoned when their accents betrayed them, and she recalled the girl who once whispered German into the dark, believing her voice would carry her somewhere. Now, that girl stood poised to lift others. Conflict flickered in her mind. Accepting meant leaving behind the safety of the familiar, the routine of shifts, the certainty of every peso earned. It meant stepping fully into an uncharted future, risking failure on a grander scale. Yet every fiber of her being pulsed with the resolve she'd forged in the lobby's crucible. She nodded, voice barely more than a whisper, I accept. In the weeks that followed, the center took shape in a modest building not far from the Grand Imperial. Lavender walls went up, desks appeared, and maps of the world adorned the corridors. Lupita stood at the front of the first class, a dozen eager faces reflecting her own past fears. She taught them German, English, even the soft art of self-advocacy. With each new phrase they conquered, she sensed her own breakthrough, pain transformed into purpose. Yet growth brought its own trials. Some students arrived distrustful, scarred by past humiliations. Others questioned why a hotel maid now presided over their futures. Lupita faced those doubts as she had once faced Klaus's anger, with honesty, empathy, and unwavering conviction. She reminded him of her story, how every stumble, every betrayal, led her here, and she showed them that true strength lies in rising. Months later, at the center's grand opening, Klaus returned, this time as a guest of honor. He watched as Lupita cut the ribbon, her uniform replaced by a simple white blouse and bright smile. Cameras flashed. Local news hailed the laundress-turned-leader as a symbol of resilience. But Lupita felt no vanity, only gratitude for the journey that began on cold marble floors. As she stepped aside to greet her first students, Klaus slipped her a folded note. Inside, in elegant script, read, you once cleaned floors. Now, you clear paths. A soft laugh escaped her lips. She realized that her life was no longer defined by where she started, but by every choice she made thereafter. The center buzzed with conversation, the air thick with new dreams. And Lupita, once invisible, now stood at the heart of a thriving community, proof that courage can echo far beyond a single moment. If you've ever felt overlooked, remember Lupita's story. Your voice matters. Share your own journey in the comments below, and let's lift each other toward the spotlight.